Hi everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name is Jim. If you haven't been here before, this is predominantly a turning channel where each and every week I show people how to make things on the lathe. Now this week we're going to be working with some really large cones. These are sugar pine cones and these were sent to me from Mark and Teresa, and this is a commission for them. I know they've been waiting a while, but you know, I've had a really hard time trying to figure out what to do. I've got two of these. This is the one that's in better shape than the other one, and I'll explain that in a little bit here. But anyway, these are really cool cones, and hopefully I've got an idea as to what to do with these, but we'll have to see how that all works out. Anyway, let's move over to the casting bench, and we can talk further about what needs to happen with these and what I've done so far with these. So, Mark and Teresa sent me two of these. When this one arrived, the top was all kind of damaged. You can see that there's some other glue in here, and I suspect that they tried to glue the pedals on in the past. So anyway, what I did initially was cook these in my toaster oven for 20 minutes on 300, and then that releases a lot of the pitch that you see here. Hopefully you can see that. Some lighting here. On the tips you can see these dark areas. Well, that's pitch that has leached out of these cones. I've done this 3 times. So this has been a grand total of, well, 60 minutes inside my toaster oven. And then what I've been doing is sitting them in acetone, and acetone will eat off all of this pitch. But if you know, these, I've never seen cones that have so much pitch in them. It's crazy. And I think the pitch is really the main thing that's holding this cone together. But the acetone, of course, you want it to eat that pitch off because you certainly don't want it in your final product. Like there's a prime example of the pitch that's on these pedals here. So, you know, this top was fuller, but of course there was a big piece that was missing. And this on the bottom looked like this. But after this cleaning with the acetone and in and out of the toaster oven, the pedals are starting to fall off. So, you know, I can't clean these anymore because if I do, we're not going to even have anything to work with the way it's going here. So all I'm going to do is I've got my flap sander mounted in my Jacob's chuck, and I just want to clean off the ends of these cones, and then I think that we're ready for casting. Hopefully we're ready for casting. It's actually been surprising how long this has taken, just due to the amount of pitch that's inside these cones. It's absolutely crazy. All right, well anyway, let's go over to the lathe. We'll clean the tips of these off and get to casting. I'd personally like to thank you all for stopping in to watch this week's video. So what's the big deal with the pitch? Why does the pitch really need to come out of these pieces? From past experience, if you don't remove as much pitch as possible, it will continue to leach out of the form after it's made. So at some point you got to call it, and that's exactly what I've done here, where, you know, I can't do any more because I'm just worried about losing more petals. So, and it's not just the sugar pine cones, it's all pine cones. You need to cook them to remove that pitch, or else you'll see it forming on the surface afterwards. So all I'm using here is the shelf lining material, again, that I got from Costco, and we're going to wrap these pine cones in it and then stick them on a wood base and then glue that down as well. I like this method. It's very versatile, where you can work with any size, and it really will cut back on your resin usage. But of course, you've got a lot of seams, and a lot of times you can get leaks by using this material as well. But I'll still continue to use it. I just really like the fact that I can wrap it around the piece that I'm working on, and not use so much epoxy when doing this casting business. So the last time I used this method, we did have a leak. I was using melamine as the base. This week we're going to be using plywood, so you know, fingers crossed the plywood will work this time around and not leak like the melamine did. This week we're going to be using deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy. Again, absolutely fantastic product. pretty rare, even when I do over pours, that I don't get thermal cracking. So they are big fans of the Peacock hollow form, like a lot of people are, including myself. So we're going to use emerald green, rainbow blue, some crystal purple later on. I did forego the gold in this, and I'll explain that a little later on. But so far, I mean, these colors really go well together. And I really hope you guys like the look of this, because I certainly do as well. And, you know, we haven't done a platter in a long time, so this week's the week. Now, to get ahead of any leaks, I poured a little bit of the epoxy down into the bottom of the form, let it sit for 10 minutes, didn't see anything, then I came back and poured the rest of it, and then it went into my pressure pot for 3 days. Well, I just pulled the top off the pressure pot. Well, that wasn't part of the plan. Now, I do spray mold release on a regular occasion, all on the inside of my pressure pot, just for this reason. So we'll see if it works this time. Well, looky there. Spray mold release inside your pressure pot, people. You'll thank me. All right, well, this one I don't think I'm going to bother with. It's almost to the top. Let's see if I can break this apart. It definitely got hot by the looks of it, because this looks like it's come apart. There's really no way of telling where it leaked from, though. And what do we do here? I guess I'm going to try and glue this seam down again. And we'll mix up some more resin and fill that. So in the future, when I make castings like this, when I use the hot melt glue, I think what I'll do is take that Gorilla Tape that you see me using there and stick that on that hot melt glue. And in the future, that should stop any leaks that come from those areas, if in fact that is the area that was leaking. All right, 3/4 of a liter. This should do it. Let's hope. Pretty much the perfect amount. All right. I can't imagine this leaking again. I shouldn't say that, but man, there's a lot of glue on here, and sticking that Gorilla Tape on there when the glue is still soft should really seal it up. All right, this will go into the pressure pot for yet another 3 days. I'm going to prop it up so that it's sitting more level than what it is. And we'll see you guys in 3 days. Well, all right, it's 3 days later. We're out of the pressure pot. Yeah, let's get these out of these molds and then have a look at it, and we'll go from there. Still not 100% sure what I'm going to do with these. Others have suggested when using this method to pour a faster setting epoxy like the Pro Series or ArtCast, and just at the very bottom, let that tack up or solidify. And then of course when you put the deep cast in, then it usually, you won't have any issues as far as failures on the very bottom. Time is usually an issue, but losing 3 days was a problem here too. All right, so anyway, there you can see the witness line and the 2 pours. It is pretty close, I would say. What I will do is when I cut this up, I'll make sure to cut right on this witness line. That way, when they're in different parts of the form, it's not really, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. But the one thing about this is it's very, very slick. And I do like the fact that this is all kind of uneven. So, when these go into a form, the unevenness will work in our favor as far as the way it looks, instead of having perfect round discs, which is not really the look that I'm going for here. But first things first, what I want to do is just pinch this between centers and take some sandpaper, some 80 grit, and just kind of get all the shine off, because I want to make sure that the resin adheres, or the epoxy when it's poured to combine these all together, has a good bonding surface. And right now it isn't. When this is shiny like this, the epoxy has a hard time bonding to this. So whenever you can, I know it's not always possible, but whenever you can, you should always make sure to try and take off any of the shine and give that epoxy a tooth to stick to. You'll definitely see this technique when people making river tables, when they're doing multiple pours. And you know, it's the same principle when casting epoxy pieces like this. To make sure that you're not going to have any issues, it's a fairly easy thing to do when you're talking thermal cracking and trying to fill thermal cracks. Well, that's a whole different story, because usually those thermal cracks really aren't that wide, and you know, it's difficult to get down and do any sanding. But by using this method, once they're combined, there in theory should not be any issues, and well, there wasn't on this later on. So this is a good practice to do, and you should always do it if you're doing casting such as this. So now that we've got our pieces cast, now we got to cut them in discs. And you know what, to be honest with you, at this stage, I really didn't know where I wanted to go with this. I had debated on basically quartering them lengthwise and then laying them into a form. But to me, I thought that would look just kind of odd, so I didn't do that. There was a couple things working against me. The size of these things, if these were say 1.5 inches or 2 inches in diameter, then of course you could cut those into disc and then place them around a form and everything would be fine. But you know, these things are easily probably, I would say, 4 inches in diameter, so then that becomes hard to do around a curved form. Again, if you're cutting round stuff on the bandsaw, be very, very careful, because it can be easily ripped out of your hands. That's why I was using that block to keep the piece from rotating. But once they get down to a certain size, it really is unsafe to try and cut them on the bandsaw any further. So that's why you see me using the Sawzall here. Even the Sawzall had a hard time getting through this, and it was actually pretty much a brand new blade on it as well. But trying to come up with a creative way to use these pine cones was a really, I really was having artist block, if you will, on what to do with these pieces. If I would have had 3 of them, I probably would have just casted them all in a bucket of epoxy and made a hollow form. But since I only had 2 of them, it's kind of an odd number to work with, especially when you're casting. So in the end, I thought that this was probably the best way to go about doing this. They definitely didn't need to be this thick. They could have been thinner. But at this stage, I still was working out in my head exactly what I was going to do with these pieces. But in the end, I'm really happy with the way this looks, and I hope that they are too. All right, so this is what we're going to be doing. This is a very large platter is what we're going to do with these. In the neighborhood of almost 16 inches in diameter. So other than the wall hanging, this is probably going to be the largest one that I've ever done. And all I've done is taken this shelving material that you can get at Costco, and a 5/8 piece of plywood, wrapped it with the tuck tape, and then made it basically to fit our pieces. I realize that it's tilted in a little bit here. That's not really going to matter. I mean, we're going to have to do some trimming on the outside of this when it's on the lathe too. So, you know, this should finish out at maybe 15.5, somewhere around there. Now, I don't think that these are going to float, but my luck will be that it will once we put the epoxy in here. So I'm going to glue these down, and then we'll get to mixing up some epoxy. I should have stocks and hot melt glue companies here, because I seem to use a lot of it. If you don't glue these down and then they float, then once these are wet with the epoxy, you'll never be able to glue them down. So why risk it? All right, let's mix up some resin. So we're back again with deep cast. Now I might have been able to use art cast here, but there's probably a very good chance that with thermal crack, so that's why I went back with deep cast again. This is crystal purple. Again, this is another fan favorite. I absolutely love this color as well. And this took so long to cast and to make. In the background, I was making other things because it's, 2 weeks in the making. Well, all right, here is the first 1.5 liters. I would suspect that it's going to take at least 2 of these. Maybe not. I'll mix up half of that and we'll be right back. All right, here's another 3/4 liter. Well, good morning. We're ready to mount this piece on the lathe today. Let's free this from this mold and see if we've got any issues on the side. I think that we should be good though. There's not like there was wood that was going to release any air bubbles. I don't see any down in the casting. A little bit here on the top, but it doesn't matter because it's going to be all turned away. Anyway, let's get it out of here and see what we're looking at. So far, I think it's going to be pretty neat. So this time when I made the mold, I laid a bead of glue around the outside of the wood at the bottom and then wrapped it with the shelf lining material and then stapled it in place, and then I ran a bead of glue on the inside. So, I always try to set myself up for success, but sometimes success will just have no part of it. This time it wasn't an issue. The mold worked great. Well, I think that this is going to be really cool. We do got to get a glue block on the bottom of this, but I'm waiting for my electric frying pan to warm up the glue. As soon as that's ready, we'll get our glue block on. Just using the Kutzall sander here to get, give us a tooth for the hot melt glue to bond to. Again, make sure that the glue block doesn't rock back and forth. And along with that, I thought that I would center this and then draw a circle all the way around it. Usually when you stick the glue on, you can see through the glue down to that circle. And I just measured it to make sure that it was centered, and for the most part, it worked out quite nicely. Now, due to the size of this piece, it was not put into the pressure pot. I just set this on the bench, and this is another very common question I get all the time. Do I need a pressure pot? Do I need a vacuum chamber? The answer is no. If you want to cast with this epoxy, anyway, I can't speak for other epoxies. For this epoxy, you do not need either one of those. Will those give you a better casting? Yes, absolutely. Epoxy is expensive, and I highly recommend getting both a vacuum chamber and a pressure pot if you're going to work with it, because it can be very frustrating to work on a piece and get it all ready for casting, throw the epoxy in it, set it on the bench, and if it's got a lot of wood in it, well, that wood is going to release air. So, if you don't seal the edges of the wood, then you're going to end up with bubbles in your work, and now you're chasing that for hours and days. Trust me, I've been there. My last board video that I did, I could only do, to cast that on the bench. I should have sealed the edges on those boards prior to that, and I think that it would have been a lot better, but those boards that I made were all pretty much end grain, and end grain will release a ton of air. So, if you can swing the cost of a pressure pot and a vacuum chamber, then I highly recommend doing that. It's just going to create less aggravation and just a better overall experience when working with the epoxy. Leaks are another thing. If I didn't have the mold release in the bottom of that pressure pot, I would have been a while pounding on the bottom of that to try and release all that epoxy so that, you know, when you set something in there, it isn't rocking around and it's actually sitting fairly level. So, you know, do yourself a favor if you can swing the cost of it, get the pressure pot in the vacuum chamber, and your turning experience will be so much better. I should mention that we are using the number 3 Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems. There is a link in the description to get 10% off your next order. And $255 is what we had to start at here. It was a little out of balance, but not that much. But I never did weigh this casting, but it is fairly weighty. If you look at the size of the glue block as well, it's larger than the normal size glue block that I use. So I especially made that size there. I think it's around maybe 4 inches, and that has plenty of holding power. This thing isn't going to go anywhere. I think eventually I go up to 475. Here it is right there, 475. So, and eventually I'm able to get 1,000 afterwards, after it's thinned out a little bit. But getting things in balance and thinned out is the key, so you can pick up the speed. So early indications are that this thing is going to be absolutely fantastic. Really like it, and it's already given me 60s vibes, like 100%. I could see something, you know, if you had about 200 of these that were smaller in diameter stuck on wallpaper, there's your 60s. that's what I think anyway. You can certainly leave a comment down below and tell me what you think, but this is really got, especially when you see the finish go on this thing, it's got total 60s vibe. Love it. So as far as your house selling update, I know a lot of people are interested and keen on what's going on in our lives here with this house. And if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about and you're new to the channel, my wife and I are going to be selling our home that we currently live in here in Eastern Ontario. And we're going to be moving to the east coast of Canada, to the province of New Brunswick. That's our home province. And at some point, when our house sells. And anyway, we had an interested party look at the house last week, and things look really good. They were supposed to bring their parents back to have a look at it, and nothing came of it. I don't really know what happened there. So we're kind of right back to where we were before. We are doing upgrades to the house. My wife and I, 2 weekends now, we've worked on the back deck. Even my real estate agent, who served in the military with me, was there helping us on the deck, so really do appreciate that. But man, it was hot. On Saturday, this past Saturday, I think I changed my shirt 4 times. Just absolutely brutal. Hopefully our sweat equity will pay off. Because, man, it was hot last week. But so far so good. And it looks almost as nice as this platter. Still got lots of trimming to do. All right, so what do you think? I thought that this would be the best angle for you guys to see this. So, you know, I'm just going to turn this into a classic platter shape. There's already one step right here. I don't know if you're picking that up or not. Move this light over here, put some light on the situation right there. And then, of course, there's the foot. So I think that I might go a little deeper with this. Taper this out a little more on the end here. Then of course we'll do the same thing. We'll match the front here. We'll take this probably down to about a 1/2 inch thickness, somewhere around there. We'll have to make a call on that as we're going. I I don't see any point going any thinner than that, and it may end up being thicker than that too. The way that I think that this is going to look really cool when it's displayed, and we'll see, we'll try and set it up at the end to show you, is for this to sit in a bowl rack and then have a light source behind it shining through it. And I think that it's going to look pretty cool, but we'll find out in the end. But you know, not 100% sure on that yet. The other issue I'm having is a lot of chip out, even though, so typically once things are running true, I typically don't have a problem with chip out, you know, unless you're really aggressive. So I've changed the cutter on the Hercules, so hopefully we'll get a cleaner cut. But I think the problem is you're going from pine petals to resin to pine petals to resin all the way around this piece. So it's really kind of interfering with the cut. So anyway, we'll step this down, make this a little more defined, more tapered, if you will. I might go in a little bit deeper on this as well, but anyway, that's my plan with this. I'm going to stay away from beads on this piece because I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it with these petals. It's one of those things where it's just, you can't mess with it too bad. I'm not concerned about this because we're going to whittle this down probably about a 1/2 inch in thickness, right? All right, let's do it. One last update on the house. The new quartz countertops will be installed on Monday. So that will really brighten our kitchen because we have dark cabinets. I'm a wood guy. I want wood cabinets. I don't want melamine cabinets or anything like that. So we have maple cabinets that are stained almost a chocolate brown, maybe a little lighter than that. And I really like the look of it. But of course, you know, the trend right now is everything is white, 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 white cabinets, white countertops, white, white everything. I mean, there's no color. Like, so anyway, I don't know. There's no spice in any this decor anymore. It just seems to be white. So by putting in these white stone countertops, and my wife is also going to do a subway tile white backsplash, and we may have to paint the kitchen as well. So we're thinking that it's going to be just white, white, white. Give everybody a neutral background, and then, you know, hopefully that will entice people to buy the house. Other than that, I mean, I just don't really know what we can do here. I realize that, you know, the economy right now is not exactly the best here in Canada. Interest rates are very high, so that's certainly not helping. But, you know, I don't know what to say. We knew that it was going to be a tougher sell just due to the price of the house in the current market. But I didn't think it was going to take this long. And we're still trying to stay positive that, you know, it's going to sell this year and we'll be able to put up the new house and the new workshop. And I know everybody, well, a lot of people are really pulling for me to put up this new workshop. And trust me, nobody's wanting this more than I am. But anyway, we're just going to try and stay positive, and hopefully good things will come here soon. Anyway, that's enough drama for 1 week. This is the drama channel. Trying to not turn it into the drama channel. But anyway, I don't know if you picked it up or not, but we're at 750 now. And again, as this thins out and lightens up, you're able to pick up the speed. Still whittling down through this. I will say that the epoxy was having a bit of a hard time adhering to the petals. The petals on these on this sugar pine were really quite smooth, and so, you know, the key here was to take light cuts. If you're too aggressive, then, you know, you're just gonna get tons and tons of chip out. So very light cuts. I know that I have quite a thickness to get rid of here, so I'm probably a little more aggressive than I should be because I know that I can clean it up later on. But once I get down to almost the final thickness that I'm looking for, I'll be taking a lot lighter cuts as we proceed here. And there's a sneak peek as to what this is going to be. Yeah, oddly enough, there was some voids to fill down in there. Don't worry, they go away because I end up trimming them away. But I really like the fact that the pigment is sitting on those petals and it turns them into flowers, like really large flowers, I might add. So, I think of all the pine cone pieces that I've done, that this is probably by far my number one. I really do like these larger cones and the way they look with, the large flower effect. And the other issue that I was talking about earlier, where I thought about maybe quartering those cones lengthwise after casting, well, you would have lost all of that. So that was another reason why I didn't go in that direction. In the end, I think that the platter was probably really the only option that this could be, just due to the fact that there was only 2 of these cones. If I would have had 3, that was a different story. But since I was only working with the 2, I think that the platter was the way to go. And anyway, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. It'll be interesting to see if anybody has any other insight as to maybe what they would have done as far as casting is concerned. But in the end, I'm very happy with this, and hopefully Mark and Teresa are as well. So as you can imagine, after changing the cutter, we were getting a cleaner cut, that's for sure. Another indication, like a lot of people will ask me, how long do you get out of one of these cutters? And that's a very hard question to answer because I'm working with a variety of different materials. But I would say typically 3 to 4 epoxy pieces you should be able to get out of a cutter. One indication that the cutter is pretty much nearing its end or it needs to be rotated is if the tool is generating a lot of heat through friction. So I mean, when I find that when it gets to that stage, the end of the tool is so hot that you can't really put it in your hand. So if that's the case, then you need to rotate the cutter or swap it out, because you're just creating so much heat from friction that it's really, well, it's best to change it. As you can see, we're finally at 1,000 RPM. And of course, epoxy wants to be turned at 1,000 to 1,200 RPM. I thought I would show you a picture of the Hercules there, the way the nose of it is tilted down. Again, treat this thing like a gouge, and the cuts are virtually the same that you would do with a gouge. I know there was somebody who had commented that they would really like to see tools shown before I use them. So, I probably should have showed it earlier in the video. But the number 1 is a carbon copy, basically, of the number 3 Hercules. It's just smaller in size, considerably smaller, actually. And of the 2, I do prefer the number 3 over the number 1. I don't know, just the cutter is larger, and it just, for me, it's more robust. I mean, when you're talking tools and like a bowl gouge, it's the size of it is comparable to a bowl gouge, so that also kind of makes it easier to use, for me anyway. I know it's not for everybody, but for me it is. So I'm going for a 1/2 inch wall thickness, like I typically do on the majority of my pieces. So just continuing to thin this out. And again, the new cutter's just cutting fantastic. And now that we're down, I'm getting close to where I want to be. So now I'm taking really, really fine cuts. And in the next series of, well, the next clip here that we're going to see, I'm going to show you quite a simple way to ensure the pieces are relatively flat prior to sanding. There's the start of it, actually. So this is a zoomed out view. As you can see, I've elevated the tool rest. And if you see the position of the Hercules right now, the handle is way up in the air. Well, when the handle is way up in the air like that, it's virtually impossible to get a catch. And your index finger rides along the tool rest, and as long as you keep your finger engaged with the tool rest, it acts like a depth gauge. And this is one way that you can get a relatively flat surface prior to even going to sandpaper. I've used this method a number of times. This is probably the first time that I've really shown it in detail. My left hand in the back is actually only holding the handle by 2 fingers. I'm hardly holding on to this thing at all. So when it's elevated like that, pretty much zero chance of getting a catch. So that's why I like using this method. When it comes to pieces that need to be flat like this, or flat-ish, the very center of this platter it is dished in slightly, but not very much. You'll see it in the upcoming pictures. Another thing that I'll do, and it's not so much an issue with this, because the vast majority of this project is epoxy, and epoxy doesn't move per se. But if this was a piece that had a lot of wood in it, I would probably be going back and forth from the front face to the back side of this, just trimming things up, because as the tension comes out of wood and things will move, and especially the heat that you're generating while working on pieces like this, you will definitely get some movement. So in order to take that wobble out of these pieces, and so that you can elevate your speeds, try going to the front and to the back of pieces and keeping them running true, and then that way of course you can bump up the speed and keep going. I don't go above 1,000 on this. I probably could have, but I just didn't really see the need of it. And ideally, all of those pine pieces would basically be the same shape. You'll notice that maybe some of them, there's some petals missing, or they're not really full. I just don't really see a way around that when you initially cast these pieces. And I was just using the Ellsworth gouge just to clean up the glue that was down there, as the Hercules has an issue doing that. And there we go. We are finally ready for sanding, and you can see the light coming through this. It's just going to really pop when this epoxy coat goes on. Finally, on the sanding, these are the 3.5-inch dipple discs from sandpapr.ca, and I'm going to sand from 60 to 180 because we're going to do a resin coat. I know that there has been some issues with sandpapr.ca as far as filling orders is concerned. I found out yesterday or the day before that their 3.5-inch die was broke or needed to be sharpened. They are working on it, and they do apologize for people that have put orders in and they have not been able to fill those orders. Correspondence, they self-admittedly, has not been great, so they're going to work on that as well. And hopefully they'll be back. The 3.5-inch discs will be back in stock soon. They do have lots of the 2.5-inch discs if you want to try those until you can get the 3.5. Just using a block there with some 80 grit just to do some final flattening of this piece before we go ahead with the epoxy coat. Now, there was a few areas that I thought it would probably be best to use some UV resin before using the epoxy. And of course, I typically don't do this until after things are sanded. Sanding will highlight those areas because, of course, the dust will stick in the holes and you'll be able to see them better. And anyway, after this is cured, this will go back on the lathe. I'll finish sanding at 180, and then we'll be able to get our epoxy coat on. Anyway, I do love these discs. Again, 10% off your order when you use code INLAYGYM at checkout. And get yourself an air-powered sander like I'm using here as well. It seems to really work great, especially when you need to work in close to the headstock. Well, all right, this piece is going to get the epoxy coat like I've been doing recently on a lot of my pieces. So this is 3 ounces of the Pro Series from Designer Epoxy. I've also been getting messages from people that have switched to this method, and they really see the benefit of it as well. You could use Art Cast here. It does not have to be the Pro Series. I prefer the Pro Series because it's a 2-to-1. It's nice and thin. It flows well. So that's why I like to use the Pro Series over the Art Cast. But you can certainly use Art Cast to do this as well. Well, out of all the pieces I've ever done, this is by far, I would say, got a real 60s vibe. Flower power, man. Way out. Oh, it's wild. I love it. I know it's hard to see the profile, but there's the profile. Backside is pretty darn cool too. Wild looking stuff. Big old flowers in there. Very cool. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for the second coat. Maybe we'll go with another epoxy coat. Let me know in the comments what you think about this crazy looking thing. All the pigment sitting on the petals of the pine cones just absolutely look like large flowers. See you tomorrow. Well, good morning. Here we are the next day. Thought I'd show you this, see where we're at. I'm not going to be able to do another resin coat on this or epoxy coat because this piece is too wide to turn on my rotisserie that I have. So we're going to have to stick with the Waterlux, and the Waterlux is fine as well. But overall, I mean, it looks pretty good. Don't have too many complaints at all. Anyway, I'll be sanding from 180 to 800, and then we'll get our first coat of Waterlux gloss on. I definitely see the benefits of having a finishing room. So in the future, if we ever get this workshop built down east, I'll have a room that's going to be essentially dust-free, where if I want to do epoxy finishes, then I can do that. I definitely need to sort out and get a better rotisserie setup than what I have now. But, you know, inside my workshop is very dusty. And if you try to do an epoxy coat on there after sanding as much as I did on this piece, it's going to be very hard to keep that dust out of the epoxy, even if you've got a box over it. So, buffed it with the Triple E. Now I'm cleaning with denatured alcohol, and that's showing you right there why you should do that. And we'll get ready for a first coat finish. All right, here's the first coat of Waterlux gloss. Well, there you go, first coat of Waterlux. I must say it looks pretty nice. Don't know if it'll take any more than 2. Of course, lots of bling in here. You know I like my bling. There's backside. I will say that the emerald green seems to pop the most of them all. Nice and shiny, just the way I like it. All right, I'm not going to show any other coats. This video is getting too long as it is. So I'll just buff this tomorrow, clean it with the denatured alcohol, put the next coat on. And I'm thinking that's probably going to do it. Other than that, we'll see you when we're doing the foot. So after 2 coats are finished, we're ready to take the waste block off the bottom of this. Now you notice that I've removed the homemade faceplate from this waste block, and then I'm trimming away it. The reason for that is because you can't get the parting tool in to cut this off because of the flatness of the platter. So we're just going to use the bowl gouge here from David Ellsworth to clean up the majority of this. I cut a bunch of this out of here because it took quite a while to get rid of this hard maple waste block. After that's done, we'll switch to the Hercules and the bottom was sanded from 180 all the way to 600. Well, all right, that's going to do for the video. Special thanks to those who watched it all the way through. I really do appreciate it. And a special shout out to the membership. If you want to be a member of my channel, it is $2.99 Canadian a month. And what I will do is post pictures through the week and give you updates as to what's happening on Friday. If you did miss last week's video, I will link it at the end of this video. And other than that, let's have a last little chat about this beautiful platter. I really like this platter, and I certainly hope that you guys do as well. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what you guys think about this gigantic platter. Very, very cool. 15 inches across. Overall, it's about 3/4 of an inch in height, and it's about ½ inch in thickness. Here is the very bottom. I don't know if you're going to be able to pick that up or not. But where I've sanded, or where I've signed, if you put a light source behind it, you won't see the signature. So that's kind of why it's in a little tighter on that sugar pine cone, I should say. The rotating footage at the end should be quite nice. I do see some stuff in the finish, so I'm going to have to put another coat on it. And of course, probably a couple of coats on the backside as well. So we're not done yet, but overall, I really like the look of this piece, and hopefully you guys do as well. And I hope that Mark and Teresa do. That's the important one. Hopefully they do. Again, I know that it's been a long time coming, but anyway, here it is. And I absolutely really love it. So colorful, so shiny. It's very hard to put on video here. It's so shiny. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below to be entered into the giveaway at 130,000 subscribers. When we get there, we just went over 129,000. So we're getting there. So hey, if you haven't subscribed, please do that so that we can start giving some stuff away. Of course, that's only for continental USA and Canada as far as designer epoxy is concerned. But by leaving a comment down below, you'll be entered into my giveaway, and I will ship worldwide at my expense. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, leave a comment down below, and if your name is selected when we do the draw at 130,000 subscribers, I will ship it to you at my expense. I don't know what we're doing next week. I've been so busy tied up inside the house that I don't have anything poured, and it's Thursday, and I'm kind of panicking a little bit. So I'll probably try and do that after I shut this camera off right now. But anyway, that's it. Take care, stay safe. Don't forget the bell. Please share my videos with your friends. That is the largest way for me to build my presence here on YouTube. And of course, that thumbs up will always help with the analytics so that YouTube will push my content to others. Have a great weekend. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care.